Welcome to the GamerBase. This is Con Artist. Today we're counting down the top 10 PC games of 2013. Let's get right to it. Number 10, Total War Rome 2. Now this game had absolutely huge shoes to fill. The first Rome, a lot of gamers have very fond memories of it. It was the first kind of really big strategy game we got to play as kids. And does this game live up to it? Not quite. I mean, unfortunately, since the developers were so rushed into it by the publishers, it's a thing we see a lot in the industry today. They were kind of rushed to meet the release date, and so this game was released in a state where it was basically unplayable. The AI was terrible. There was bugs all over, just game-breaking bugs. Thankfully, after the patching, things got a little bit better. The game looks a little bit nicer, and it plays a little smoother, but it might just be a case of too little too late. I mean, if you're willing to invest the time to get back into it, I recommend that you do, which is why it's on the list, but ultimately, I just prefer Shogun to it. It doesn't feel as cohesive as it did before, but that being said, it is still grand strategy. It's fantastic. It's Total War, so you should probably check it out. Number 9, BioShock Infinite. Now, this is not controversy baiting for the sake of it. A lot of people have been praising this game to the heavens, and I don't necessarily agree, and the main reason is that the story and the gameplay are just kept in two separate compartments. I mean, you're essentially playing a shooter, and every once in a while, a bit of story is drip-fed to you. Now, the problem with this is, when you think about the first BioShock, when people ask you what genre that game is, you don't really, I mean, you kind of hesitate to say it's just a shooter, because it's not. It's also an exploration game. There's a lot of RPG elements to it. There's a lot that goes into it. There's absolutely no question that BioShock Infinite is purely a shooter with a bit of story thrown in, and that's really the main problem here. Is the folks at Irrational kind of wanted to square the circle and kind of make it available to a mass audience with the shooting, and it just didn't work, and it just really took away from the quality of the story overall. So I mean, it does look incredible, and it's a huge just kind of journey, and it's really fun, but it just didn't live up to you know, the standards set by the franchise as a whole. Number 8, State of Decay. This was a huge surprise for me. I mean, this game came out on Xbox, I think last year. It just came out on PC this year. It's been really smoothed out. It still is an indie game. I mean, it's not AAA, so you can see kind of there's a few rough edges and a few, you know, bugs here and there, but it doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, the vision of the designers straight to the screen, I mean, there's a very small gap between it. I mean, you can tell the ideas were executed extremely well. And it's very difficult, because this is a game that's, I mean, games like this, people have been trying to make them for quite a while, the kind of zombie apocalypse survival thing, and I'm glad that they didn't take the route where you just kind of level up a character to absurd levels, because that's what you think when you first go in, but it ultimately ends up being a sim, because really you have to kind of watch out for your group. You know, you have a group back at your home base, you got to watch out for their medicine, for their food, for all kinds of things, and it really does create a very kind of well put together experience overall. Definitely give this one a try if you haven't already. Number 7, XCom Enemy Within. Now, the first XCom was my favorite game of last year. This is the expansion to that game, so it still is one of my favorite games of this year. The reason it's at number 7 is because I wanted to give a little more space for the more original ideas of the year. But that being said, this is just a brilliant game. I mean, the first XCOM was so well designed, you wouldn't think there would be any more room for new mechanics and things like that. But the way they've seamlessly integrated these new weapons and new armor and all just kinds of stuff, making it pretty much a different game. This could be a completely standalone experience from the first one. Is just really fantastic. The difficulty, I mean, it's as hard as ever. It's very challenging. You're going to get very frustrated. You're going to be losing team members left and right. But it is just so well done. Number 6, Papers, Please. Now, when the trailers and kind of the buzz start coming out about this game, people start thinking, okay, I get it's original, I get it's new, but how is it going to play? Is this going to be one of those bullshitty political commentary games where we're just going to have to sit around while someone preaches to us? Thankfully, it's absolutely not. It's not only you know, a game with sort of a message if you read into it, but it's also a really good game in the sense that you really start getting invested in this very mundane job you have of checking people's paperwork to make sure they can get through the border, and it becomes kind of this hypnotic state of you just picking up the passport, looking, checking this, stamping, not stamping, and it's really fantastic. And the funny thing is, you get this niggling feeling that starts kind of creeping up on you that you might just be a terrible person, because it's just about the job. It becomes purely about the job, and you're denying old ladies and people who clearly don't possess any kind of threat to the country, and you're just denying them access because their passport is expired by one day. It really puts you in the shoes of someone who has to work a job to survive. It does a fantastic job of it. It's definitely recommended. This is one of the best games of this year. Number 5, Rogue Legacy. This is also one of my favorites. This is kind of part of the new wave of indie roguelike games. I don't know what it is. I think developers have realized that just with a good enough programming for randomly generated levels, you can make a really kind of packed experience for kind of a lower cost. And so you have a lot of these kind of throwback games like Rogue Legacy coming out. I mean, it isn't technically a roguelike. The developers kind of went out of their way to call it a roguelite because there isn't really permadeath. What happens is all your progress and your gold and all that gets saved for the next run through. The big catch being obviously that once you die, your kids take over for you, and your kids have these kind of genetic deficiencies. It's a very cool mechanic, and it works really well. And the fact that it's so difficult is balanced out by the fact that you do get to keep your progress, because I can't imagine making this game in one full run. So I'm glad they took that decision. It's very fresh. It's a lot of fun. You're gonna spend a lot of time with it, and definitely worth playing. Number 4, Gone Home. Gone Home is kind of the European film of this year's games. It's an experience not many people are gonna like, and they're gonna be asking questions like, why are you telling me this? Why are you focusing on the nondescript piece of paper in the corner as if it's the most important thing in the world? And the reason is because it's probably one of the most important things in the game. I mean, it's extremely subtle storytelling at its best, and it's something you don't see a lot in games. I mean, the simplest objects like a piece of paper or a book that someone's reading and what that tells you about the person. I mean, it's really devices that are picked up from films and from music and from books, and the way you kind of describe a character, because ultimately you don't meet any characters in this game. It's just you walking around this house kind of looking at things people own and kind of letting you get a picture of that person, and it really creates some of the most three-dimensional characters I've ever seen in a game. It's really original, very daring. It's the kind of game that could only be made by a small group. I think it was about 4 or 5 people total made this game on a very small budget, and it really shows. I mean, this is what's great about indie gaming is nothing like this would ever be approved by a big publisher. It's fantastic. It's a really great story. It kind of borders on schmaltzy sometimes, but never quite goes there. Very heartfelt. Excellent game. Number 3, Spelunky. Spelunky is pretty much the polar opposite of Gone Home. It is a game in the truest sense. This game could have been made 10 years ago, and it could have kept that same aesthetic and the same design and everything. It's completely pattern recognition. That's all you need to get through Spelunky. I think an ancestor of ours playing it, 250,000 years ago would have done just as well, because it is ultimately about, this is bad for me and this is good for me, and you just go on that. That's all you have, because the game doesn't really explain much to you. You get a very short tutorial telling you how to do the basic stuff, but there's so many mechanics you need to discover on your own, and the only way you can do that is just by trying it out. You try it out. If you die, you're dead. You gotta start from the beginning again. You don't carry anything off with you. It is a true roguelike, unlike Rogue Legacy. You kind of you just gotta try it all over again, but it's still just so much fun. You never really feel like you've wasted time by doing a run that you didn't accomplish much on, because everything you do kind of teaches you about the game. It's so much fun. If you get some friends together as well, you can ruin your friendship and everything, but it's still a really great time. Definitely pick this up. Number 2, The Wolf Among Us. The Wolf Among Us tells a much more traditional story than Gone Home does. I mean, traditional in the sense of, if you played a Telltale game, you'll kind of know the direction it's going. It's got moral choices, it's got brilliant writing, it's got really good voice acting, and it just creates a much more traditional narrative, the kind you'd see in a TV show or a film. And it is kind of on the same level as a very good TV show in the sense of, just the way it's presented and the way the story is told and the way the world is kind of revealed to you without too much exposition, because it's a very new, kind of very original world. I don't want to ruin too much because you should play it, but ultimately the way it just kind of brings you in on this little secret of how the world works without treating you as an outsider is just fantastic. It's got really well put together action sequences, and it's just a fantastic game. The first episode has only been released, but I think the next few will give The Walking Dead a run for its money, and they might just be one of the best told stories in the medium so far. And now for the big moment. Number 1 is Hearthstone. Now, if you thought I wouldn't put a game that hasn't technically been released on the list, you'd be sorely mistaken, because Hearthstone has not technically been released, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is out. I mean, I know it's still in beta, but everyone who wants to play it is already in. It's pretty much a fully fledged game already. There are very few bugs. Everything's been fixed up. The game's already being patched. There's tournaments for it. I mean, it's released. Let's not split hairs here. I can't really say more about this game except that I've essentially been taking turns putting cards on a digital table for the past month or so, and pretty much everyone I know has been doing it as well, even people who aren't into games. This is an absolutely flawlessly designed game. I mean, there's 9 classes, each of them plays so differently, but they're all so well balanced, and every time there's a tiny little bit of unbalance, Blizzard just comes in and fixes it immediately, and it completely changes the metagame. There are hundreds of cards to craft decks with. It's completely free if you want it to be. I mean, you can pay money if you want, but you can also just get gold from playing and do arena runs and like a draft mode, and it's just, there's so much to do, and it's absolutely fantastic. And if you want to try it out, you definitely should. I think this game is gonna absolutely sweep everybody over next year. Definitely worth a try. That's been the list. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.